Uhuru comrades, I am Akile Anai, the Director of Media and Communications for the African People's Socialist Party.
And you heard, I'm Dr. Mariah, Promotions Coordinator for Black Power 96.3 FM out of St. Petersburg, Florida, but available worldwide to you all through the Black Power 96 mobile app. And our show airs on Black Power 96 every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern.
And you already know you are tuned in to the one and only One Africa Worldview podcast, the show that brings you much needed African internationalist analysis on news and world events, plus dynamic discussions and presentations from anti colonial organizers and experts across the globe, and a to what end to our struggle against colonialism with real time ways on how to engage and get involved.
Yeah, and for today's show, y'all, just as our title suggests, and you've already seen there, we are talking about the acts of war on Iran and just carried out by the U.S. and Israel there. And we're going to start with an overview, actually, of the timeline of the recent events that's occurring and to just provide some historical context when it comes to that. And before heading into that discussion with none other than Chairman Omali Yeshitela, right here on the show, y'all, leader and founder of the African People's Socialist Party, author of African Internationalism, the viewpoint that we bring to you each week right here. And it's the theory that we use to analyze all of the events that we have going on in all around the world there. And this theory is something that informs our practice, y'all, in making the African Revolution. Chairman Omali will be here right here today on the show to provide us with that necessary understanding to take us back into our communities, to organize the masses, y'all, and just to fuel the anti-colonial struggle. And he'll also be taking your questions right here on the show. So make sure you are heading over to the chat and leaving those questions there for the chairman. And so throughout the show, please add your voices, as we said, to that chat.
Yes.
So now, Comrade Kile, can you provide us with the overview of these recent events?
Yes, thank you so much, Comrade Mariah, for introducing our show, and I want to recognize and salute my leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, and so excited to have him on today to really deepen our understandings of what's happening right now with the U.S. Israel war on Iran, and we're just going to go over a couple of things that have transpired over the last several days, and of course, we made a report on last week's show of some of the acts of aggression that we predicted were leading up to this moment. And here's what we know of what's transpired over the last few days. The morning of February 28th, during Ramadan, a period of fasting, and while negotiations were taking place, the US and settler colonial US proxy of Israel carried out a joint attack on the Islamic Republic of Iran using B 2 bombers to assault Tehran, Isfahan, and other regions. They targeted civilian infrastructure, including a school for girls. 165 Iranian girls have been killed in this attack. Iran responded forcefully by striking military targets in the Zionist entity in Haifa and Ashkelon, and in the United Arab Emirate, or the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Jordan. In Qatar, an Iranian missile evaded 3 Patriot missiles. Iran struck a U.S. military support ship. The Iraqi resistance struck alongside Iran. Iran destroyed U.S. radar with a range of 5,000 kilometers that had detected Iranian missiles. Iran's initial retaliation used only the old stockpiles. A French reporter admitted the Iron Dome can't handle ballistic missiles, and the U.S. Zionist entity's stockpiles are low. Iran also struck Palm Jumeirah in the UAE, a luxury development in which the Trump family has investments. Iran also hit Israel's desalination plant and the center of Tel Aviv. The Zionist entity is suppressing information on how many are dead and wounded. Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz, presenting major shocks to the colonial economy. Even George H.W. Bush didn't attack Iran for fear of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. The Dubai airport is closed indefinitely. A Zionist settlement area was destroyed. Iran hit the Harir base in northern Iraq and the Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. The base is a hub for U.S. special forces and houses U.S. military assets. Iran inflicted heavy damage on the headquarters of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet. There are reports that the head of the Zionist entity fled to Cyprus, was rejected, and had to try to seek refuge in Berlin. Iran's opening retaliatory strike lasted for 15 hours. Big targets included a CIA base in the UAE, Israel's nuclear facilities, and the general staff building of its military. Iran succeeded in inflicting heavy damage on the CIA base and succeeded in striking the entity's nuclear facilities, including the Dimona reactor. Iran also struck 3 oil tankers near or in the Strait of Hormuz. One is French Skylight, flying the Palau flag. Though the US and Israel have attacked Iran again, including central Tehran, Qom, Karaj, and Shabah port, Iran says that martyrdom of the leaders will not slow down its military operations. Over 113 US colonial soldiers have been killed, around 200 have been wounded. Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei has been martyred. The CIA is responsible for revealing his location. Iran said Ayatollah Khamenei's martyrdom will trigger a great uprising against the tyrants of the world. Iran forced the UK to use interceptors to defend its base in Cyprus. Iran's True Promise 4 continues, and already hundreds of thousands outside of Iran have risen up. Iraqis have stormed the US embassy and have seized heavy industrial equipment. Pakistani set the UN office in Skardu on fire, and Pakistani youth stormed 2 US consulates and at one of the US consulates attacked US Marines. On the African continent, Burkina Faso has closed the US embassy and has labeled the US and the Zionist entity of Israel terrorist states. As of March 1st, Iran's Revolutionary Guard says it has struck the USS Abraham Lincoln with 4 ballistic missiles. Also, the French naval base in Abu Dhabi was hit by missiles and drones, and the US base in Kuwait was hit with a drone. Iran and the Iraqi resistance have destroyed the US base in Erbil. France has moved its carrier strike group in position to attack Iran. Germany and the UK are preparing to attack Iran also. Iran has been destroying the US base in Qatar. That base is the headquarters of the US Central Command. Hezbollah has launched rockets at Haifa. Iran has shot down 3 US F 15 fighter jets. Iran targeted a security meeting, killing over 10 of Israel's generals. Reports have also come in that the head of Israel's chief of staff has been killed. Iran hit at least 2 Amazon data centers, one in UAE and the other in Bahrain. US has relocated most of its aircraft to Cyprus. Qatar has stopped production of liquid natural gas. Israel has ordered Chevron to shut down the Leviathan gas field, and the Madrid government made 15 US aircrafts withdraw from Spanish bases. The US military has been rapidly withdrawing from Dubai. That's the latest on this recent attack by the US and its settler colonial base of operations in the Middle East region, also known as Israel. And we feel it's important to be able to provide this perspective of the fight back, the response to the US and Israel assault on Iran, because we know that the colonizer continues and tries to project itself as the victor in a battle, in a war they cannot win. And it's important to say that this moment didn't just appear out of thin air. There's hundreds of years worth of history that leads us to this exact moment, and it establishes why this war on Iran is an Africa issue. So let's review some of that history. Dr. Mariah?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to really make sense of what's happening right now, we'll need to kind of look back, and we'll go all the way back to 1953 when the US government overthrew the democratically elected prime minister of Iran and a man named Mohammad Mossadegh. And at the time, the British were heavily involved in the Iranian oil industry, and the US wanted to break up the English monopoly on petroleum there. But Mossadegh was moving to nationalize Iranian oil, and under the British monopoly on their oil industry, the Iranians were only getting 16% of the value of their own oil. And by using the CIA, the United States went into Iran and staged a coup, overthrew Mossadegh, and installed a tyrannical puppet leader named Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who was known as the Shah. And the U.S. exercised influence throughout this region through its embassy in the Shah's Iran. It was during this time in the 1970s that our very own chairman, Omali Yeshitela, was declaring solidarity with the Iranian student movement who were in exile in the United States. But we were still waging a struggle against the neo-colonial stooge that was the Reza Shah. Editor and contributor to the Burning Spear newspaper in the 1970s, Comrade Omali keeping was also a party leader who had stood up against hundreds of frothing at the mouth white people at a party-led demonstration in Gainesville, Florida, y'all. And this was a demonstration in solidarity with the people of Iran and Iranians in this country who were facing the lynch mobs after the Iranian people's seizure of the United States in 1979. But through the 1979 revolution, the Shah's government was overthrown and the democracy that we know today under a supreme leader was established. And this marked the end of United States neo-colonial control in the country. And this bit of history alone tells us that the United States has historically attempted to establish its influence in the Middle East all over. And since the revolution, Iran has actually been one of its obstacles.
Absolutely. And, we see, with Israel, obviously, that this is one of the ways in which the U.S. has, worked to establish a greater influence in this region. And if we fast forward to 2006, about 20 years ago, the Burning Spear newspaper provided analysis around renewed U.S. anxiety around Iran's development of nuclear power. We wrote that Iran's declaration of being close to developing nuclear energy had enraged the U.S. government and much of its white citizenry to think that any non-white nation might possess the ability to develop nuclear weaponry. We noted that this was because the ideology of white power, which drives U.S. imperialism, demands a monopoly on violence or the ability to commit acts of violence. We also connected it to how, at the time, the Iranian government was one of the few established governments in the world that openly condemns the existence of the colonial settler state of Israel. In the 2010s, the Burning Spear had also published the statement of Iran's president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, scathing indictment of U.S. and Western imperialism's policies, particularly his speech at the 2012 United Nations General Assembly. By 2020, under Trump's first term, Iran was in the headlines again after the murder of General Qasem Soleimani by a U.S. airstrike. Shortly after his assassination, Chairman Omali Yeshitela addressed the African nation on January 5th, and it was summed up that despite the U.S. historic murderous aggression against anyone it deems a threat, what was different this time was that the U.S. was openly acknowledging it. And we're seeing more of that now with Trump's second term, especially as we see that it was Trump who first broke the news about Ayatollah Khamenei death at the point of pride. So the U.S.-Israel attack on Iran today comes with a long history of U.S. aggression and destabilization efforts in Iran and the Middle East at large. But to hear more about this as it's unfolding today, we have none other than Chairman Omali Yeshitela, leader of the African nation, here with us today to explain what this means to African people. So want to just welcome on our leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Want to appreciate you for joining our show. Welcome back to One Africa Worldview, and thank you for coming on to address this unfolding issue. And we'd just like to give you the opportunity to sum this all up and address some audience questions as they come in. So to kick us off, based on today's overview, can you say more about why the U.S. is initiating this war with Iran, Chairman?
Uhuru, first of all, I want to thank you very much. I really appreciate being able to have this discussion with you and with our listeners, and to take an African internationalist interpretation of what is happening and the historical basis for it. Because if we simply listen to what is being delivered to the people through the what is they call legacy media, the colonial media, we see this as just some kind of one-off operation. We hear that the Khamenei, who was the leader that they just murdered, was this authoritarian force and even people who claim to be for democracy, who claim, in this country, the British Parliament, the French, the Germans, and all of them who, on the one hand, say that they may have not liked how the U.S. regime just carried out this aggressive and murderous mission of assassination and continuous colonial rape on the one hand, they're characterizing this as something that, despite how they may disagree with what this government has done, and that even questions the legality under international law, and even I think perhaps it was I'm trying to remember if it was Cory Booker, who was a Democratic Party Negro here in the United States, talked a bit about how he was opposed to the fact that the Congress did not give permission for this war that's being initiated on the one hand. On the other hand, that there was something positive about killing, overthrowing this government from their perspective, because we're looking at an authoritarian tyrant who is responsible for spreading, contributing to terror throughout the Middle East, etc., which is an extraordinary claim. But what is happening is that we in the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru Movement is something we want everybody to understand, that this is not some one-off kind of situation. And maybe this person, Donald John Trump, went about this thing differently, but it was James Earl Carter who was president in 1979 when the people of Iran, mostly young people at the time, students, had overturned, who actually moved on that U.S. embassy that they characterized as a nest of spies, which was true. The U.S. embassy functioned as the institution through which Iran was being controlled through the Shah of Iran, who they had put in power. But this is not a one-off kind of situation. Iran, along with the illegitimate white nationalist settler state, this entity of Israel, function as the police organizations controlling the Middle East and Africa. That was a primary role that they had. And we worked with the Iranians going back all the way to, as you mentioned earlier, to the 1970s. We supported the Iranian opposition to the Shah of Iran, who again had been who was put in power by the United States government, who in this country, and it's worth mentioning this, to listening to Booker and some of the others talking about the authoritarian government of Iran. The Iranian under the Shah had a secret police organization that was called the Savak. And the people in this country, Iranian students in this country, to demonstrate against the Shah of Iran, even inside the United States, they wore paper sacks over their heads, just with holes cut in the face so they could, for their eyes. And they wore these paper sacks because the Savak, the Iranian terroristic secret political police in this country, and working, of course, with the U.S. secret political police, would identify people and get their identity and track their families down in Iran and do horrible things to them. So we had this relationship with the Iranians. And when the James Earl Carter, when the Iranians took the embassy and went about, they captured much of the information in the embassy, contributing to a deeper understanding of the role of the U.S. government in using Iran as a base for aggression, not only against the Iranian people, but people throughout the Middle East and in Africa. It was the Carter administration presided over this process. In fact, this was something that helped Carter lose the election to Ronald Wilson Reagan. It was because Carter was Reagan, of course, was the more contemporary prior to the current U.S. president, was the one who was about making America white again too, great again too. And when they couldn't hold on to Iran, and this was something that was perceived as a huge defeat by the Democratic Party Carter regime. It's not that Carter didn't try. In fact, they sent helicopters in to try and rescue the so-called hostages with a team of U.S. Forces. But the sand got into the engine of the helicopter and it crashed and they couldn't do anything. So it was a complete disaster. This is where we also saw the emergence of the Iran-Contra affair, where the Reagan administration, prior to coming into power, through back channel doors, had made some kind of agreement that the hostages would not be released before the pending election. Because if Reagan wanted this to be again a badge of shame that he could hang around Carter's neck to push forward his own election, and this is what they did, and they engaged in using military forces, some retired military forces, some CIA agents, some existing at the time and some retired. They used this to engage in this drug. They would use this, and they would engage in drugs that they put in our community to raise money, to buy guns and things like that that they use against the people to forward counter-revolutionary struggle in Nicaragua and El Salvador. This is the emergence of the Contras. So the rise of people like Colonel Oliver North, who had tons and tons of monies that they were using as a consequence of reaching this agreement with Iran at the time. So it's been always an ongoing kind of mixture of hostility directed at Iran, because Iran broke out of this situation where the Shah, again, along with Israel, was working to control the Middle East in the interests of U.S. and other traditional colonial powers, and to control Africa. So this was part of what this agreement was about. So from the very beginning, our party was able to unite with the struggle of the Iranian people. First of all, because we find the whole idea of colonial control of peoples repugnant politically. And secondly, because we understood the relationship that the colonization of Iran had with African people. And if we didn't understand it, what was happening here in the United States, we had a significant base in Gainesville, Florida, where one of the most prestigious schools in Florida, the University of Florida, is located. And on the campuses, the campus of the University of Florida, you had these nighttime rallies by white students. And their slogans were things like "Sand niggers go home" and "Send the Klan to Iran." And throughout the United States, white people were attacking people who they presumed to be Iranian if they wore turbans or if they were Arabs. They didn't even know the difference in a Persian or Iranian and an Arab, and it didn't matter. It was just a frothing at the mouth kind of lynch mob mentality that had been raised inside this country to attack anybody who was forwarding the interests of colonized people against U.S. domination. In this instance, it was Iran. And it was really important because Iran was this force that it was a shame and embarrassment, because this whole notion of the old flag never touched the ground, and America never lost a war, and white power over everything. This was a prevailing notion, and part of the ideological essence of any regime in this country is a presumption of the invincibility of white people, and this was what we were seeing with the attack on Iran and the response of the Iranian people, and why we saw this mobilized lynch mob frenzy that was attacking Iranians and anybody else who opposed them. We organized at that time in 1979. We organized a demonstration in Gainesville, Florida, in support with the Iranian people, both in Iran and those who were being attacked inside the United States, those sand niggers, as they were characterized at the time. And on the first demonstration, where we had hundreds of Africans, mostly young people who marched with us. That march was attacked by hundreds of white flag waving idiots who chanting America, America, America. They attacked that first march and they ripped up the red, black, and green flag that was leading that march. And the Gainesville Sun, which was the local newspaper there, legacy newspaper, I think it's called. I think it was ultimately purchased by the New York Times. I'm not sure about that, but I think that was the case. And the Gainesville Sun editorialized against the mobilization. They went and got the black preachers in Gainesville to preach from the pulpits to keep African people from joining the march in solidarity with the Iranian people. But we marched anyway. And we marched into the middle of this mob of white people who, again, were there threatening our lives and threatening the lives of anybody who stood up. And they were, again, chanting America, America, America. And we marched right in the middle of the entire hundreds of them. And I stood up on a platform there, a makeshift platform. And as they were chanting America, America, we started chanting Africa. And I stood up on the platform and I said, the sand niggers are here. And then we marched, and the government who was supposed to be providing security, the police for the march, they said once we got there to this city government location, the outside of it, they said this is as far as we're supposed to go. And I told them, that's okay, just go where you want to go. And we began further moving this march, and we marched until we crossed into the African community. And when we crossed into the African community, Africans started coming out of the clubs and out of the houses and things like that. And they faced these America chanting white people carrying the red, white, and blue flags. And they said, you're not in America now. And these are people who had nothing to do with our mobilization, but they understood what was happening. And they chased those white people out of there. I mean, the white people left running. But it was a very perilous kind of situation. So this contradiction had to do, and always has had to do more with more than just Iran. And what has happened, and what has been happening now, the crisis of the social system has gotten deeper and deeper. Iran represented a part of the crisis. When the people rose up, Nicaragua represented part of the crisis. When the people rose up and took their country back and began to develop for themselves, and therefore in the process of so doing, taking their resources back from the colonizers. Iran, you had a situation then where I think Iran had perhaps the third largest oil supply in the world after Venezuela and I've forgotten, and perhaps Russia. You had this huge oil reserve there in Iran. And so this was part of what it was that they wanted there. They wanted to take it. They wanted the oil to be no longer available to the people of Iran, just like they don't want the oil to be available to the people of Venezuela. They sanctioned them. They do everything they can to crush their capacity to feed, clothe, and house themselves. This is how colonialism works, how it has to work. And so what we saw then was a tear in the fabric of the whole colonial mode of production. And by which we mean that this is what we are affected with. And most people don't understand this. That's a colonial mode of production, that the entire global process through which people, through which society feed, clothe, and house itself. It's a parasitic economy that came into being, a parasitic system that came into being as a consequence 600 years ago when Portugal attacked Africa and began this process of forcible dispersion of African people throughout the world. That's where Venezuela comes from. Was no Venezuela as we've come to know it before this. These are areas that had been captured by colonizers, white colonizers from Spain in the instance of most of the Americas. So this thing created a world economy, and it was being challenged by the people taking back their resources in Cuba and Puerto Rico, in Nicaragua, in El Salvador, in those places, and also African people in this country who were struggling to take control of our own resources, which includes our labor, our capacity to feed, clothe, and house ourselves. And because to keep us dependent, to keep the colonized people in states of artificial dependency is an absolute requirement for the success of the colonial mode of production. So this is what we were locked into. And now we have a situation where the crisis has gotten much deeper. And because even as in the past, but right now, we see the heating up of this contradiction, the growth of movements of colonized people to take back our resources. That's what Venezuela is. That's what Iran was about. That's what Palestine is about. People want to take back their own resources, take them from the colonizers. And the colonizers are the ones who make the law. And the colonizers make the law, even though colonialism is illegitimate itself, and having made the law, they make it illegal for people whose resources they've stolen to try to get them back. To try to stand up on their own. So you break the law. This is what they use as when they initiate the process of re-stealing the oil of the people of Venezuela. They go into a country, kidnap the president, a brutal, ruthless kidnapping that violated all kinds of international law and even U.S. constitutional law, kidnap him and use 150 war helicopters, used all kinds of, moved the largest battleship in the world, which is a part of their arsenal, that they had it in the colony of Puerto Rico, and they used all of these resources to attack them, and then they got around the issue of whether or not they violated the U.S. Constitution because they did not get, the Congress did not give them permission to make war. And they said, well, we weren't making war, that we had indicted Maduro and his wife and his children as being for drug pushing. And having indicted them, this was just an arrest that we were carrying out. So it was not like war that we were doing. But they can't make that claim. And that was ridiculous because, as we know, the drugs that we've had to face in our community were put here by the CIA. I mean, that's what the whole crack cocaine thing, a drug economy was created in our community. So it's a ridiculous claim, obviously, that they made about why they attacked Venezuela. But here, when you look at what they're doing in Iran, they can't even make that claim. They just, even as they pretended to be negotiating with the Iranian government, and the Iranian government had made meaningful concessions around things like nuclear. They had already said they were not engaged in creation of nuclear weapons. And I'm not saying this as an apology for the Iranians, because I think that it would make sense for them to be developing nuclear weapons. There's a good possibility that the United States would not have attacked them if they did have nuclear weapons. They've seen what's happened to defenseless people. And of course, the objective of the colonizer, of the oppressor, is to make sure that those they are oppressing are defenseless and cannot defend themselves. I mean, go back to December 4th, 1969. Even when you had this huge array of military forces that attacked the Black Panther Party, Fred Hampton in West Monroe in Chicago in 4 o'clock in the morning, they made sure that he was helpless by having somebody, a snitch, put drugs in his Kool-Aid to make him helpless. That's what the oppressor does everything it can. It doesn't, there are no rules that it recognizes as having any kinds of thing with honor and principle. There is no honor there. So they want Iran to be helpless. They want the peoples of the world to be unable to defend themselves against their aggressions, and they make it illegal if you do try to defend yourself. Even as they're doing that, they've got Israel, which is an illegitimate white nationalist entity that was created on stolen land of the Palestinian people. It's armed to the teeth with nuclear weapons. They bombed Nigeria, and the claims of course, they want oil there, and they want to be able to get from into Niger, where the Sahel states, where people have kicked the French out and taken back their own resources. So this is part of what I want to contribute to in terms of this discussion up to now. And I hope we have some more time to talk about some other things. But that's part of what I think is really important. And I think it's important to say you have a world economy. There's no such thing as just a struggle in Iran or a struggle in Palestine that's separate from the overall economy, economic life, the whole political, the colonial mode of production connects all of us into the same thing. And what we've seen now is the growing ripping of the fabric of the colonial mode of production. And that's what we're looking at. And that's what we need to understand, that our future is definitely connected to the future of the people of Iran, definitely connected to the future of people of Cuba and Venezuela, and obviously throughout Africa, because Africa is the foundation for everything that they've done. The whole social system rests upon a foundation of stolen African land and labor, and then, of course, the stolen land and labor of the indigenous people of the Americas.
Uhuru, thank you so much, Chairman. Just really taking all of this, because you're bringing in the whole history. I mean, we're talking about 600 years, worth of history that contributes to this moment that we're looking at now, which is so important because this stuff that's happening is not isolated from, any of the other events that have occurred just this year, and, over the, last few decades with struggles, with the U.S. and aggression in the Middle East and, so-called Middle East.
Comrade, just want to say that within the 600 years, we must understand that this country that we live in, that's called America, was created during that process. Was no America at that time. The 600 years ago when Portugal attacked Africa, and part of the process of developing this territory, this land, this entity that we live on today, is stolen land of the indigenous people, is stolen people and labor in terms of Africans, et cetera, et cetera. This is the thing we're breaking out. And for most people have been put into a situation where they see history beginning at the time where the history of the colonizers began. So when you see the Congress and the president, all these people talking about history, they've just been here a limited amount of time. That's their history, and they want us to see our history as something that stems from that, as opposed to their history being a consequence of what they have done to us and the rest of the world. So I just think it's really important to say that's what we're fighting with. We have to be able to see the world as it really is, as opposed to seeing the world through the eyes of the colonizers, those who oppress us.
Uhuru, Chairman. And I think that allows us to have a positive vision for the future, too, because
yes.
The colonizer sees a very bleak future, and is trying to rescue itself, with, everything that it's doing, right now to the peoples of the world. And so if you adopt, the worldview of the colonizer, then all of this stuff can be very, just demoralizing. And so, revolutionaries are optimists, and we can see the future outside of this. And all of this is, part of the process of, the past and the future, like, coming to a head. So just really, really appreciate you, Chairman, going through all of this. And we do have some questions coming in from our viewers, our online audience. So I wanted to take a look at those coming in. We had one from Comrade Norman Jalali in Canada, who asks, can you speak on the secular forces fighting on the ground in Iran? And then we have a question coming in from Comrade Allison, who says, Uhuru, Chairman, can you speak more to what you stated about the U.S. government trying to make America white again, and what this means for the African community and white people's responsibility? Uhuru.
I don't understand what secular forces that Comrade Norman Jalali would be talking about fighting on the ground in Iran. What secular forces? And I would like for him to, if he can, to respond to that. What he means, what secular forces, and how are the so-called secular forces in terms of what they are doing in the political world, because they're not doing something that's, in some other world. How do what they are doing in the so-called secular forces compare and differentiate what's been happening by the, I guess, non-secular forces? What is meant by secular forces here? And the secular forces, yeah, what is meant by that? Certainly it's not the U.S. troops or Christians all, probably, although there are Jews who are participating in this attack as well, who people who call themselves Jews anyway, in terms of a religious affiliation. What secular forces is he speaking of?
Uhuru. Well, hopefully Comrade Jalali can respond to that in the chat. So
and the other thing was from Allison.
Yes.
And the thing about making America white again is really should be a real concern for African people, because the thing that distinguishes this regime that we look, and the same thing happened with Ronald Wilson Reagan, is that unlike the big contest that's happened between those who call themselves conservatives and we who are identified as liberals and conservatives and reactionaries, etc., inside this country, it's something that's defined primarily because of their participation within the entire electoral process. And the big debate that happens between them is the best way to control the colonial system itself. And the so-called liberals have concluded that the liberal parasites, the colonizers, have concluded that the best way to control things is to offer to create these pressure relief valves like welfare and other kinds of things that they can give to Negroes, jobs at a particular time they can give to Negroes and the people who they enslave. And that this is the best way to keep, to satisfy us and then keep us loyal to the system. Whereas people who've been considered conservative and reactionary, et cetera, they have, their position has been to get rid of the whole notion of giving Africans and enslaved anything and just make sure using the power of the gun to control everybody. And so this is how this contest you see happening. And historically, traditionally, the liberals supposedly have been associated with the Democratic Party, and the Republicans have supposedly been the headquarters of the conservatives and reactionaries, et cetera. Although all of that seems to be changed in terms of this characterization. But the point is that what has happened with this government and the Reagan administration is that they are not relying on the confines, restrictions of these political parties. They are mobilizing, they're called populists. Their objective is to mobilize the whole white population. They are rabid. They create frenzy of frothing at the mouth, lynch mob, attitudes among ordinary white people, and also that infuses the institutions of control, like the police of the state apparatus, with this kind of lynch mob attitude, disregard for law. So I see with the so-called ICE thing, they're killing people in the streets and whatever with total disregard. They don't care. And when I say care, I'm not trying to give the impression that I think that the system is motivated by things like concerns and et cetera. It has clear political objectives, except in this administration, you see also greed is on the top of their agenda, not only with the Trump administration, but with the Israeli administration too. Netanyahu, like Trump, they're all crooks, and they creating institutions to steal the Palestinian land. They're already plotting and saying they're going to build on the people's land, take their resources and build on them. So they for their families and for themselves, they barely pretend to represent the general body of interests of so-called America. They have broken this whole American concept down to a fashion that the white people see themselves having to protect who they are as white people and what they perceive to be their interests from black people, from other people who are not white, from the colonized masses of the world. So this frothing of the mouth thing that they've done, and it's very dangerous. It's a very dangerous moment. And part of what makes it dangerous is the opportunism of what has been successfully able to pass itself off as some kind of left-wing communist movement inside the country. These are settler communists, settler left-wing forces who have never united with the struggle of African people against colonialism. Never, 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 never united against colonialism as the primary mode of production. Have never been able to say the reason I can live in this place we call the United States is because the colonial domination, aggression against the indigenous people on whose land we now occupy and who themselves live in concentration camps that are called Indian reservations, have been like this forever, for the longest period of time. They don't say, even when they now wax nostalgic about how they used to love the Black Panther Party, they never loved the Black Panther Party because the Black Panther Party was against colonialism. And the white left would never support the Black Panther Party struggle against colonialism. It was only after the terror against the Black Panther Party reached such a height that in order to win support from white people, they called a national conference against fascism in 1972, Oakland, California. 9,000 people attended that conference, most of them white, because now it's not struggling against colonialism, which means uniting with the struggle of African people to liberate ourselves from this thing, but now it's saying all of us are the same. And that's not the case. And that's what's required by the white left. And I'm mentioning this because people who now claim to be concerned about what's happening in Gaza, these are white leftists who claim to be concerned about the Palestinians, who claim to be concerned about what happened in Venezuela, etc. They're lying. And I would tell the Palestinians and the Venezuelans and everybody else, they're lying, because they can't be against colonialism in Venezuela. They can't be against colonialism in Palestine and then unite with colonialism of African people and indigenous population right here in this country. And if, in fact, they were against colonialism, they would have united with Black Power Blueprint. They would unite with this expression of Black Power that we are talking over right now, this channel that we're looking at, but they don't do that. In fact, they require us to be able to subordinate our interests and to satisfy what they claim to be the interests of the peoples of the world. And it's only because if they had united with us in 1979, when we stood with the Iranian people, there was no white left opposition there. It was we who did that. It was we who faced the white mobs in Gainesville, Florida. There were no white leftists who were there with us. And they haven't been with us. And the only reason they might get involved now is because the possibility of some major confrontation that would mean a reinstitution of something like the draft that would get white people, white children going to war, losing some kind of security. But if they had united, and if they unite now, and they unite now with the struggle against colonialism, then the United States would be too preoccupied right here so that it wouldn't be able to do what it's doing in Iran and all these other places around the world.
Uhuru, Chairman. So in other words, the white left is also interested in making America white again.
Keep them white like it is.
Keep it white.
Yeah.
And Comrade Jalali did respond with the clarification: the secular forces being the communist or socialist parties in Iran. And he also commented that the Tudeh Party of Iran was formed in 1941 with Soleiman Mirza Ikandari as its leader. So
we worked with the secular forces in the 1970s. That's who we were working with. There were two. I think one was the Tudeh, then was another. I've forgotten the name of the other, and I'm not sure it was that, because we distinguished these two specific forces, one from the other. And there was another one who a force that was quote unquote secular. That I've forgotten who it was as well. But it ended up that when the Shah, that when people had to flee Iran, the reactionaries, the Shah's airplane pilot, is the one who took them out. And I'm talking about now one who was a leader of one of these other secular organizations that's been spoken of. So I can't say about the Tudeh and the others unless I have not been able to discern yet what kind of role they played in the resistance, because just characterizing themselves as communists is not good enough for me. They got to be, what role are they playing now? Because there's some people who, and I don't think it would be the Tudeh or one of the other communist organizations, but you know, they're cheering the idea that the Shah's son or something like this could come to power, etc. And they are cheering. And we saw this problem even in 1979, where there were folk who were, because there was the Muslims who were coming to power, they were able to unite with those reactionary forces who were trying to maintain the Shah's or maintain the Iranian place, as it had been developed under the Shah. And that was a huge error. And it was a huge error. We told the communists who we were working with that they made the mistake too. They simply united and built this sort of united front with the forces who were close to the two communist parties, and there was another. I can't think of the name of that organization. Comrade Jalali may be able to remember, but they made the mistake, and we warned them. We met with them. We talked to them. That it's an error for you to throw all of your stuff in with them. That there has to be, you have to maintain your independence as a revolutionary force. Even as you come into this relationship, you have to, this united front, you have to maintain your independence so that you can be able to act independently of them, because you have different interests. And they didn't do that. And of course, they got wiped out too by the mullahs. The Muslim leadership wiped them out, because they all threw everything there. They did not maintain their independence. They did not have an independent capacity. So yeah, Jalali just forced that stuff to the surface of my mind. These issues and struggles that we were having even at that time with these comrades.
Uhuru, Chairman. Wow, I mean that's important, and I could think of other things that we could go in terms of that discussion where that could take us.
Yeah.
But we are winding down in time for our program, and I just wanted to, give you an opportunity to give, closing remarks, especially as it relates to, your call to go beyond protest and to build and seize power. And you mentioned how, historically, like the white left has not just turn their backs on, the projects and the work that our party and movement has done to do that, to capture power, but has also actively worked against it. And and so, we have, we know like this doesn't change our trajectory as the African People's Socialist Party, what's happening in the world. And if anything, it just calls on us to deepen our resolve, and our commitment to complete the struggle. But I wanted to give it to you for closing remarks so we can
I appreciate that, because those forces, even in the African community, who essentially are protest movement, that's what they are. They're not moving to build, to actually to become self-governing. That's what the struggle against colonialism is, for people to seize control of their own destiny, their own resources, etc. We've been doing this for a long time now, and we've created institutions that help anybody who wants to see that's what we're doing to be able to recognize. We've been working to solve the problems of the revolution. We've determined that we should never see the African liberation movement isolated again, like we did in the 1960s when they killed Malcolm X, and there was not a peep from the white left. When they killed Martin Luther King, there was barely a peep from the white left. It was the African people in Washington, D.C. who represented such a threat then that they had to put tanks around the White House after they killed Martin Luther King. And this is one of the reasons you see the gentrification that's happening in Washington, D.C., because the capital of the United States was sitting in enemy territory, colonized people. We have been working to solve the problems. We have created the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations, because our movement had been fractured. And when I say fractured, you had a lot of different groups doing stuff, but there was no end. To what end? There was no strategic goals that was associated with it. And so people were busy, but it was like being on a treadmill. And so the objective was to unite the movement again, like it was around the Black Powers entity struggle. And we contributed to rebuilding an anti-colonial consciousness, anti-colonial structures, anti-colonial movement, and putting African people into a common trajectory against colonialism, moving against this trap of fighting against racism or the ideas in the minds of white people to fight for the power, so that it doesn't matter what's in the minds of white people if we have our own, if we're struggling for our own future. And part of what we've done to do that, of course, is we, in addition to the Black is Black Coalition, with now some 17 organizations and growing, who are now on the same general trajectory, even though we may have different interpretations of what power looks like, but we've all said that power is what we have to be fighting for. We created the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. We had to do that because our struggle had faced such a vicious assault with the murder of Malcolm, the murder that I think in 1968, they killed something like 30 members of the Black Panther Party alone. And people African people had become so demoralized that it was hard to talk to people about revolution, because every time we do something, the white man kills us, etc. So we had to build a movement that we re-win African people into political motion, into political consciousness. And so we built a movement that was based on struggling against the concrete representation of imperialism and colonialism in our lives. The filthy merchants who were taking all of our resources and bringing shoddy resources, goods into our communities, the police violence, what was happening to us in the schools, and etc. This became foundational for the development of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. It's more than that now. It's there now. It's an organization that exists not only in the United States but in Africa, in various places in Europe. We created the African National Women's Organization because we were tired of this bourgeois white feminist movement, sometimes with blackface, intervening into the struggle, that they would take the struggle against colonialism, liquidate it, and then turn it into some kind of subjective issue between men and women, when the fact is that it was colonialism itself that created this contradiction that appears to a false contradiction between African men and African women. So we created African National Women's Organization that's everywhere and making a really important impact. We created the African Socialists International. So you can't just attack Lumumba and Nkrumah and Sankara and people like that and make the assumption that the struggle is over, because Sankara lives. And obviously we can see that in the Burkina Faso, in the Sahel, but we have a presence as the African Socialist International in various places on the continent of Africa and throughout Europe as well. So we created the Black is Back, the Black Power Blueprint, where we've involved ourselves. We've reconstructed much of northern St. Louis, so that that's been decimated by decay and policy of pushing the African population out. We put a movement on the ground. That's one of the things that factored into the government attacking us in 2022, July of 2022. So these are some of the things that we have done. And we built the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa committee, initially as a part of the counteroffensive against the attack that was made on us. But now we've opened up. For a while now, Latin America front, and so that we are in Venezuela, and we have people who are closely tied to the struggle in Cuba, and we have a glorious, magnificent relationship with the Mexican National Liberation Movement here in this country. So the thing is that this is a part of the struggle against colonialism, and these are colonized people who are uniting to change the relationship that we have with a social system based on slavery and based on genocide, and opening the door for the possibility of a whole new world, for the likelihood of a whole new world. And for people who call themselves communists and Marxists and who believe in Marxism, you can see that what we are doing is absolutely correct. Our work is not simply protesting. We've said people should protest what the United States is doing, but what the biggest protest you can make is to work and support solidarity with the struggles against colonialism right here inside the United States. That is, to unite with the project and etc., of the African People's Socialist Party, that's the biggest thing that you can do. So I want to thank the comrade for raising that question about making America white again, and the opportunist role that has been historically played by the white left. They're going to have can't do that no more. This is no longer a time when we can talk about a black movement and then a communist movement, a socialist movement. We say the road to socialism is painted black. So we say the party leads the struggle against colonialism. We lead the struggle for socialism. That's the only way we can get there. Karl Marx said that before we did. Uhuru.
You heard, Chairman. You heard it. You heard it here. Painting the road black, and that's what he's doing, y'all. Chairman Omali Yeshitela, right here on the show. Thank you so much, Chairman, for your just all the clarifying analysis that you provided to us and to our listeners today, and just for coming on in such a short notice. Also, as always, you just give a struggle a clear direction, and you did just that. Thank you so much, and as always, we look forward to having you right back here on One Africa Worldview, and again in the future. Vanguard up, y'all. Chairman Omali Yeshitela, leader and founder of the African People's Socialist Party, y'all. Author of African Internationalism, which is the theory that we bring to you each week right here, y'all. Chairman Omali Yeshitela, thank you so much. Vanguard up. So, yeah, y'all, you heard it right here. We have to unite. And we have to unite with the oppressed, freedom-fighting people of the world, y'all. We have to come together to undermine and overturn this colonial way of thinking, this colonial mode of production, y'all, and this colonial rule. And our task, we have it. We have our action. We have what we have. We have our marching papers here. As Africans and African people around the world, we know what we have to do. We have to come together, and we have to build our respective fronts on this African revolution, y'all. And right here in the United States, right here, a consequence of this greatest crime committed in human history, we must reject this assault and organize to take power into our own hands. And speaking of which, Comrade Akile, let me know as we wrap up today's show. It's just so much powerful, just so much message right here. You have some announcements to even add to all of this here, and that will let the people know what they can do to be a part of building this and painting this road black, as you heard, and being a part of building this anti-colonial movement, so which we must do to capture our freedom, y'all. So yeah, can you let us know what we have on the calendar here?
Yes. Well, speaking of taking power into our own hands, join the African People's Socialist Party in St. Louis, Missouri, April 17th to 19th. The clock is winding down. It is our international plenary theme. This time, till it's won, power in our own hands. It's not just Trump, it's the whole damn system. And this is the planning forum that we use to deepen our organization, enhance our organizing, and lead the African working class beyond spontaneous protests to capture of actual dual and contending power. This is the place for all freedom-loving people determined to have a new world free of oppression and exploitation, to take part in changing that world. You can register today at apspplenary.org. That is apspplenary.org. You can also check out the link on your screen. There is childcare available. This is in St. Louis, Missouri, comrades. So get your flights, get your hotels. Do not miss it. We are organizing to take power into our own hands, this time till it's won. So that's what we have coming up, comrades. And for all other events, go to theburningspear.com/events to check out everything that's happening, to stay updated and get involved and join the Uhuru Movement and the African People's Socialist Party. Uhuru.
Yeah, so you heard her. Make sure you are locked in. You're following us there, y'all. And we just wanted to say once again, thank you all. Thank you all to all of our viewers, our supporters, our listeners. Thank you to the chairman, Omali Yeshitela, for giving us that knowledge that we always need from you. And we want you to make sure that you all do not forget to subscribe. Just as you heard comrades say here, to the channel, you subscribe over there on YouTube, to the Rumble, to all the things. Make sure you're locked in, you subscribe, you like, you share, because we have the word for you every week right here on One Africa Worldview. So we stream on the Burning Spear TV YouTube, y'all, Burning Spear Media Rumble channels, Black Power 96.3 FM radio, based in St. Petersburg, Florida, and streaming globally on the Black Power 96.3 100.3 FM mobile app. So yeah, that's all. We had a show for you as always. We can go on and on. We see the chat is lit. Keep those comments coming in, y'all. Like, share, and subscribe, and we will see y'all next week. Until next time, y'all. One Africa.
One nation. Uhuru.